Ellie, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Unboxed, and thank you so much for coming down. So firstly, I want to start off by asking, what excites you the most about the creator economy?
I think it's like the ability for like anyone to go and do amazing things. Like, I don't have a degree, don't have A-levels, like haven't had a very exciting career path at all, like have done boring rubbish jobs, and now I'm doing like the most exciting things in the world. And I think like that was something I was kind of like butthurt about, that I never got my degree, and I was like, I'm going to be held back forever, and I never got my A-levels, so I can't go to uni. And now I'm like, well, actually I've like made those things, like I've got like as far as I would have got and further through the traditional route, like just by doing it myself. So I think it's really nice that like people who the traditional way doesn't work for them, they've still got like the opportunity to be able to like make amazing things happen.
Yeah, obviously you worked at Great Influence, you were doing personal branding for other people, right? And then everything changed, and then you are the most incredible personal brand that everybody knows, and you're just completely all over LinkedIn, and you're basically a celebrity in the B2B LinkedIn space, which is mad. Tell us about that whole process, right, of going from, working in the space to then building your own personal brand, and obviously clearly being very, very good at it to the point where you're now doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so just over a year ago, like September 2021, I started working for a different personal branding agency, which was more of like a LinkedIn agency. And I'd never posted on LinkedIn before, like I had like a profile that was just like a grey profile picture and about 50 connections. And they had kind of said like, it'd be good if you could start posting on LinkedIn so we can show clients that we're like good at what we're selling. So I was like, yeah, okay, like I'll give it a go. And then really close to the same time, I got my ADHD diagnosis. So it was kind of like making me reconsider like what I wanted to talk about and like who I was, and like thinking in a different way, I guess. And then like literally 3 weeks into posting, I did a post about like what it means to be professional. That kind of like took me to having like about 10,000 followers overnight. It was like,
what were you on before? Literally
like
nothing.
I don't know, 400 connections. And it was kind of like, okay, I've suddenly got something that I want to talk about because I've just got my ADHD diagnosis, and I've suddenly got like, for the first time in my life, people that want to listen to me. So like, how can I kind of keep that going? And then with Great Influence, Ash kind of saw the viral post and did a little cheeky slide into my DMs.
Of course.
And I was like, yeah, there's no one else like anywhere close in the game. Like my audience was growing, and like my kind of confidence within Great Influence was growing. And then kind of came to a point where I'd been approached by Dive and Bell. And that was like, oh my goodness, like they're working with people at the like top of the game in like the purpose-led space. And the conversation was kind of like, we can't really represent you if you're still working full time, because it was like, now I look back, it was ridiculous. Like I was literally like making my content, like doing talks, like talking to companies, and then like working a full-time job at the same time. Spoke to Ash, and he was amazing about it. So,
and for those who don't know, Ash is the founder of Great Influence, right? Yeah.
So yeah, he's my boss, Ash Jones. So he kind of started Great Influence after working on Steve Bartlett's personal brand. But yeah, we kind of had a conversation, and he was amazing about it. And I was like, I don't want to leave the team because I just like love this job so much. So I kind of work there like 1 day a week now, which is, I guess, mostly just for like social interaction and to do normal human things.
Completely. And as somebody's talk about neurodivergency, obviously that's a core part of you and of the things you speak about. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how, I guess, being neurodivergent influences and drives you as a creator?
Yeah, so I got my ADHD diagnosis in October 2021, and then my autism diagnosis in the April of 2022. So it's all quite recent. And yeah, I think it just gave me something that I really wanted to speak about, and something that kind of, I had a secret that I felt like I needed to share with people. And yeah, I just needed to get it out there in the world. I have spoken about a bit as well how, like, I think the way that my brain works is like, gives me almost like cheat codes into being a creator. Like, I think, I communicate in a really concise way as an autistic person, and that's really good for where I'm posted on LinkedIn, short form copy, because there's no
fluff. Punchy, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's just like
point.
Here, like the viral post was just like bang, 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 and like that wasn't like a conscious effort of me to like edit it out.
Is that just literally how you speak and how you work?
Think it's like
amazing.
If a word doesn't need to be there, like it's not going to be there. I'm not going to waste my energy on that word. And I think with like the ADHD side of things, like my brain is like a million miles an hour all the time. Like it doesn't stop from like the second that I wake up till the second that I fall asleep. My brain is like on, which is obviously really helpful for coming up with like all different ideas for content and like thinking about things in different ways. So yeah, I think it is like, that was like almost my reason to start, but it's also been the thing that's probably allowed me to do well, I guess.
Amazing. I mean, how do you think people who are not neurodivergent, can take a lot from some of the learnings that you've had even through your diagnosis and through the way that it sort of shaped your content creation?
Yeah, I'd say like just like allowing yourself to be yourself and like stepping into your differences. I think that was literally for me, I was speaking about something that made me stand out from the crowd, and everyone's got those things. And maybe that, I'd been masking as a neurodivergent person, but everybody to a certain extent has got parts of themselves that they cover up because they don't want to be like cringe or embarrassing. Or I think that's a big thing of like stepping into like what do you actually really love and what are you actually really like as a person, and what are you covering up that might be the thing that makes you different and makes people relate to you.
So I think one of your posts that blew up early on, did amazingly well, was around sort of being professional in a post-pandemic world. Can you tell us a bit about that and what that means to you, and also how important you think COVID, the pandemic, how important that has been in terms of shaping the current kind of working landscape and the platform of LinkedIn?
Yeah, so this was like the initial post that like kicked everything off. So I think coming to it, I was like very aware that I was like really new to LinkedIn and also really new to the industry. Like I'd literally been working in personal branding marketing for like a couple of weeks. So I didn't want to come on LinkedIn and be like, this is how to market. Like these are the top 3 marketing techniques, because that wasn't my place to say. Like I was nowhere near as like qualified or experienced as everybody else on the platform. So there was no kind of value in me doing that. So it was like, okay, what can I bring that those people with all that experience can't? And I've spoke about the things that didn't make me any less professional. So the fact that I've like got tattoos and piercings, the fact that I like to go out on a weekend, the fact that I'm open about being neurodivergent and my mental health. That was literally like, it was like 2 weeks after my diagnosis as well. So I was like, I literally was like mental health and neurodivergent. And I was like, I'm not actually being open about that yet, but
here we are.
And like, it was like, a list of things that like traditionally wouldn't have been included in the definition of professional, but like didn't actually change my ability to do the job. And then like a list of things that did make me professional. So like the way that I behaved and the way that I cared about my clients and the relationships that I wanted to build with my team and that kind of thing. And I think it just resonated with a lot of people. And I think the conversation actually went a lot like deeper and further than I ever envisioned it. Like my things were all quite top level things of like, I've got tattoos, I go out on a weekend, like I prefer to wear ripped jeans and a suit. She says, wearing a suit. But then like it started the conversation of like people of colour who'd been told that their hair wasn't professional, or like women who had been told that their tone of voice wasn't professional. Like it was like, it started a much bigger conversation than I probably realized that it was starting, and it gave people like the space to have that like grievance over that thing that they'd experienced.
What was it like having people, because I remember actually seeing that post and seeing the comments, and people also share quite heartfelt messages in those posts, right, which and in that post especially. How did you feel kind of having that state, that out there, and knowing that you've had an impact positively on people's what people are thinking and saying, and having that impact? It must be quite a change.
It was like amazing to be able to like let that conversation happen. Like it was their story, it was their important thing, but it was just kind of like the push over the edge that they needed to be able to share it and talk about it. And I think right from the start, it showed me like how content and content creation could like actually really help people. Like I think it was like literally a conversation that it was just a passing thought almost of like, I'm not any less professional because I've got tattoos. And then it allowed people to like share these things and like question these narratives that they'd like had put on them their whole lives. And it was like, there's a space to like, there's power in starting conversations, and there is like the ability to be able to let people talk and feel seen and feel safe to share. LinkedIn actually made a marketing campaign based on it. So,
oh really? Because I wasn't sure whether it was the other way around, but it was actually from that post.
So
wow.
I think they'd been having like similar conversations in the background, because like you said, it was like post-pandemic world, and they're like are a platform for professionals. So they'd been kind of having conversation about like what is professional, and then as people were like doing their own versions and nominating other people to do it, the VP of marketing at LinkedIn in America actually ended up doing her own version of the post. And that was like, what is going on here? And then they kind of reached out to me and one of the branding teams that they were working with and were like, you know, we've been thinking about this in the background and we'd love to kind of use you as the inspiration for the campaign. And I was actually supposed to go out to LA and film a TV advert, but it was like just before Christmas and it was when COVID was going off again and just didn't happen with visas and lockdowns and stuff. But yeah, I got to record it for a Spotify advert, which was quite cool. But yeah, it was, I think it was just like the most bizarre thing in the world that I'd literally just like woken up on a Wednesday morning and put some words into my screen. And then suddenly I was like getting flown to LA and talking to people from LinkedIn. It was just like, what is going on here?
Bit of a change from call centers, right? Bit of a change. And what repeatable learnings would you say there are from that format? Because you've had a number of posts that go viral. There's a clearly there's a sort of formula and a way of making sure things hit, and you know, you never know, but you've had so much success. What would say your kind of key learnings are from a post like that?
Yeah, I think it is like cut the fluff, like clear, concise, snappy. Like it wasn't, I could have gone into like a deep paragraph about, you know, I've been considering the things that we talk about make us professional and not professional, but it was just like, we need to talk about what's professional. These things don't make me less professional. These things do make me professional. That's it. Like, I think that is the thing that people don't have time to read through paragraphs and paragraphs. And I think LinkedIn did have a tendency to be a bit of a longer form.
I remember.
Yeah, there was like long stories and all this stuff. And I think, you know, I don't read them. If I see a post that's more than like a few like sections, I'm not going to read it. So how am I going to expect someone else to read it if I'm writing paragraphs myself? And also like reading the room, I guess, like everyone was just starting to get back to work after COVID, and it was like something that people were considering of like, well, I don't want to go back to wearing a suit. I don't want to go back to commuting. I don't want to, you know, all this stuff. So it was like, reading the room of like, what do people care about right now, and how can I like put my unique spin on that almost? I think that's something that like people talk about a lot, like almost like keeping your ear to the ground of what's going on. Yeah,
because I think that, you know, that's something which for every platform is so important, right? Actually digging into that cultural noise and making sure that you're part of that conversation. But for LinkedIn, it's obviously in a business context, and that requires a slightly different ear, if you will, to be able to pick up on that. But clearly, obviously you did, and it was amazing. Have you found going forward, you know, that still applies to content you're making now, like making sure that you're reading kind of cultural commentary and news and making sure that you're plugging into the sentiment, if you will?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's always going to be like a lot of my content is like evergreen content, because it's like tips for being more inclusive and kind of learnings about stuff that's going on for me. So it's like that is always going to be happening. There's never going to be like a conversation to tie that to. But I do think, like, especially with clients, sometimes you will do an evergreen post like that and then something will happen and you'll be able to tie it to it. Like you can repurpose that content, you know. You might have done a post about like honest leadership, and then all this stuff happens about the Tory government, and it's like, this is now relevant, my post before about honest leadership, because we're not experiencing honest leadership. Like, I think it's stuff like that where you can kind of find that combination of like stuff that's always going to ring true, and then you can almost make it like even better by tying it to something that's happening at that moment. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So I want to talk about personal branding now and kind of get into a bit about the strategy and how you like process and work through people. So if I'm a client and I come to you and I'm like, Ellie, help me make my personal brand like the biggest thing, what would you say what's like day one look like, and what is the structure to making that happen? And what is personal branding again for people who don't know? Because it means something, but it kind of doesn't. Like, what is that whole world? Yeah, see, I think it's like something that's kind of like got a bit changed. Like it kind of became like LinkedIn presence, like LinkedIn content. Whereas I think like we kind of tried to step away from that great influence to be more like digital reputation or like online reputation, because personal brand did become this almost like cliche thing of like the like templated LinkedIn post and posting a selfie with this, and almost like a one size fits all approach, when that's like the opposite of what it should be. It is personal branding. So yeah, I think a good way to think of it in those terms of like the way that we do it is like your online reputation. And I think like the starting point is always like what do you want, like full stop, like not what do you want 10k followers on LinkedIn, like what do you want? Like, do you want to be the go-to voice for women in business? Do you want to be the go-to voice for flexible working? Like, what do you want? and then work back from there, rather than being like, I'd love to have loads of followers on LinkedIn, because it's like, so would everyone. But yeah, so I think it is like focusing on like big goals rather than like numbers and stuff like that. But then on like working backwards of like, okay, so how do we make you the go-to voice?
Yeah. As a thought, do you think being neurodivergent has helped you in terms of empathy? Because obviously you've had to dig into yourself more, right, than ever, and you've been given these diagnoses, and you've kind of gone on this mission to understand yourself and to learn about yourself, which I'm sure has taught you more about people than most people probably know. Do you think it's actually helped you to work with clients?
Yeah, 100%. I think it is that like self-awareness thing, and like digging around in like the psychology of like why people do things and how people think. But I think also like how long I was undiagnosed as well, like masking. So for anyone that doesn't know, masking is like something that particularly autistic people do to cover up their neurodivergent traits. So it's like, I didn't even know that I was doing that, but I spent my whole life basically copying everyone around me to be able to fit in, which meant that I like now have the natural ability to be able to like read the conversation and like know what somebody wants from me. So for example, like at school, I would like be in one friendship group and I'd be able to like these, you know, this is how I need to act to make these people like me. This is how I need to speak to make these people like me. And this is how I like win that friendship group over or whatever. So I think it's like I've naturally learned to be able to like give audiences what they want almost. So I think that kind of applies to being able to take that step back from an online audience of being like, right, what does this audience want and how do I get to them?
Yeah, I guess it's like a real kind of extreme introspection and self-awareness, which then allows you now to be able to use that as like a superpower in a way, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. So can you tell us about a case study of somebody who you think is doing amazing stuff in the personal branding space, if you have one?
Yeah, I think someone that I think about a lot is Tinx. So she is mostly an Instagram creator. She does a lot on TikTok. But I think with Tinx, the thing that I kind of like the most about her is like her audience is so, I don't know, obsessed with her almost. Like it's almost like a way of life. But yeah, I think something that I've like highlighted, I guess, that she has done is like really specific things. So for example, she has this thing called like a rich mom walk. And it's like, it's not just like that she goes out for a daily mental health walk or whatever. It's a rich mom walk. And it was like, first it was like, yeah, you know, like getting dressed up as like a rich mom and taking your coffee and going for a walk. And then through lockdown, it became like literally like a thing that you can do on a treadmill. Like it's like 12:3:30. So it's like the incline and the speed and the how long you do it for. And that is like now known as like a rich mom walk. But it's like, you know, that is now that she owns that thing. It's literally having daily exercise, but she like owns that thing and people will like tag her in it that they're doing it. And, you know, it's like taking something so anyone could talk about going out. I could post every day saying, I'm going out for a walk for my mental health. No one's going to think, oh, I best let Ellie know that I'm going for a walk. But because she made it like almost like branded an activity in her life, it made it like relatable to her and people kind of pulled her up on it. And she also does this thing where really strange where she puts like jalapenos in rosé wine. And again, it's like a little, it's not just like, I love a glass of wine. It's like, I love rosé wine and this is what I do to make it extra nice. And then like everyone in her audience kind of jumps onto that and shares that with her as well. So I think it is like those really specific things that she does that like make people have like a really close connection almost.
Yeah, and you think that's her being like just completely herself and just saying, you know, if I find it funny, someone else will. It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is like, and like, I think it's again, the like finding the differences. Like, it's like people might not think that it'd be, you know, cool to name going for a walk, but it's like something a bit different about her, a bit quirky that she's like given it this like brand almost. And I think she even has like merch now where it's like,
I was going to say, if she hasn't like made that.
Yeah, I think she has like joggers and hoodies and stuff. And I think it is like, just not being embarrassed of like cringe. Like I think I would, or in the past I would have been like, I'm not posting that because everyone around me is going to think it's cringy that I'm trying to like make a brand out of going for a walk. But it's like, if you just own that and like put yourself out there and do something a little bit different, like people like that. I saw a quote as well and it was like, nobody that you've ever like loved or admired or looked up to has ever been grey it's like you love them because they're like fully themselves, and they're like intense, and they're like too much, and they have these differences, and they like, you'd never love someone for being the same as everyone else, or you'd never admire someone for being the same as everyone else. So like,
or why would they stand out? Why would they be different? Yeah.
So I think it is that thing of like, if you want to like do good things, or like get in front of a big audience, or like make opportunities for yourself, you kind of don't have a choice but to like own those differences.
You know, you've created, I think, 2 sort of pieces of IP for yourself. You've obviously got Unmasked, which is your community on LinkedIn and beyond, and then the food blog. So do you think that's going to also become more of a trend? Firstly, like, tell us about both of those. And then I guess what people can learn from the sense of, I guess, as a creator, you building your own brands and putting your IP out there. Like, how important is that, do you think?
Yes, I think the Unmasked community was almost like a natural byproduct of my audience growing. I think as my audience got bigger and bigger, and because it's like a sensitive subject and one that people don't get to talk about a lot, so many people were messaging me and reaching out to me and wanting to share their stories and wanting to, you know, tell me how they could relate. And as kind of more and more were happening, it was like, there's just no way that I can be a friend to this many people. But also that I'd been that person a year ago that didn't have anyone to ask and felt a bit lost with it all. So didn't want to just leave them in the lurch either. So it was almost like, I can't possibly be, it can't be a one-way street of me being a friend to all of these 150,000 people, but what I can do is like put them all in a room together so they can be that like one person to each other. Normally you would have a business and then you would build a LinkedIn audience, whereas I had a LinkedIn audience and no business, which I think was good, because it was like, it allowed me to grow really quickly, because I was just posting what I wanted to post rather than like being salesy or anything. But then it was kind of like, okay, I've got this audience now, and like, what can I do for them, and what can I like do with this audience? This is like kind of like backwards from what I'm saying, but I think taking people off the social media platforms as well is a really important thing to do, of giving them something a bit like more personal, a bit deeper, a bit longer form. I think is important. I think it's so easy for stuff to get lost when it's like a big, massive platform of stuff, whereas people feel a lot more connected to you if they're literally like in a Discord channel with you talking to you. I think brands are starting to do that a lot more as well now, making it more of like a personal thing rather than just like me putting my content out to you all day.
Looking to, I guess, the future of the creator economy and where things are going for you and as a whole, where do you want to take your platforms in the future? Like, what do you want for yourself in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think this is such a hard question for me, like when I think about it, because I would never have like ever have thought I would be where I am now a year ago. So it's almost like, you know, I'm happy, like I'm grateful where I am now. Like I didn't even know this was going to happen. But I think for me, my next focus is like longer form stuff. I think a lot of the stuff that I post now is like just your LinkedIn post. It's a 60-second TikTok. And I think having like the space to get more into the nuanced conversation is important for me, whether that's video, whether that's written, but more like expanding on my thoughts rather than just like the snappy little bits and bats. I think that's kind of what I would like to do. And I think that's the same for a lot of people, really. It's almost like social media is that starting point. I think if I look at like other people that like Florence Given is also like represented by my management agency. She started off by just having like captions on Instagram. And then now she's got like 2 best-selling books. And I think it is like social media is that starting point, and it's that like learning about what you want to talk about and who you are and who your audience are.
But turning the computer on, isn't it? And
it's like booting it up, and then it's like, okay, what's the like final program that we're like loading here? I think that's exciting to think about as well, because it's, again, if it wasn't for the like being able to be a creator, there's no way I could have ever like written a book or been on, I don't know, TV or whatever it might be. But it's like, the being a creator and social media has like been a rocket ship to being able to do all of that stuff.
100%. So next question for you is, who is a creator who you are loving at the minute?
A lot of my good friends now are people that I have met through also like posting similar things to what I do. So I think I'd have to shout out a couple of my like friends in the neurodiversity space. Willis they're a creator mostly on TikTok, but they are incredible. I think they actually helped me realize that I was autistic as well, which is like now a really strange moment that we've become friends. But seeing their videos was like, a lot of the stuff I was like, yes.
And that. Yeah.
So I think they are doing amazing things and very exciting things. And also another friend that I've met who is also neurodivergent called Millie Evans. They've just released their first book, but they're like a sex educator. So I think it's a really difficult topic to get right. And I think when it is something so kind of sensitive like that, it is really important to, again, own the cringe and deal with it and kind of speak up and not feel ashamed. And I think they do a really good job of that.
For sure. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for coming on.
You.
You've been amazing to speak to. I could speak to you all day, honestly. It's so much fun. Before we go though, where can people find you? What links are there and so on, handles and that?
Yeah, so I'm Ellie Middleton on LinkedIn and at Ellie Mids on Instagram and TikTok.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.